Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Firstly, thank you to Nuffield Australia for the amazing opportunity to travel, research and present back here today. Thank you to my sponsor, Nufarm Australia. I'm very grateful for their ongoing support with Nuffield, and hopefully I can be a good ambassador for Nufarm. I'll just start with a little bit of background information on myself and my family farm. I farm in South Australia on York Peninsula with my wife and Jodie and 3 kids. We also operate a property on Kangaroo Island, which my brother manages, Ben, and his wife and 3 kids. We have 6 full-time staff, and we crop 7,000 hectares with no livestock integration. Been farming since 1877 at Paskeville and since 2001 on Kangaroo Island. We also built a packing, grading and export facility in Port Adelaide in 2014, and we export all our own lentils, chickpeas, broad beans and canola all around the world. So I picked the topic of improving soil health with manure and cover cropping because it's of interest to me and it's of interest going forward, and I see it as a huge next step in cropping and agriculture in Australia and around the world to stack up against the declining terms of trade, to become more profitable with lower inputs. So through my journey I travelled to UK, France, Canada and the US. I looked at manure storage and application, cover, relay and companion cropping, diversity and biology and the role of that biology, building carbon, improving water use efficiency and the water holding capacity of our soils. So the objectives of my travel and my study were to how do we significantly increase our water holding capacity and water use efficiency on limited rainfall that we get in Australia? What role does that soil biology have in soil health, and how can we keep it alive over hot, dry summers, which are a norm in southern Australia? Are cover crops a viable option in Australia in low rainfall areas? How can we use manure more efficiently in a no-till system where we're trying to be zero-till, therefore incorporation of manure and other ingredients is difficult? I guess at the start of this journey and through the journey of Nuffield, I've come to question whether our farming practices and our farm is truly sustainable. The way that we've grown our farm over generations is to buy more land and to continue to grow our business by purchasing more land, and that model's worked very well. It's meant that I can farm and my father before me and my children will have the opportunity to farm. But is it truly sustainable? The terms of trade declining in agriculture in Australia means that the cost structures are going up, and the only way we could mitigate that profitability and maintain profitability is to spread our costs over more hectares and become more and more efficient. I don't know that this is truly sustainable going forward. Will we continue to be able to buy more land and grow bigger and bigger holdings? Or should we be looking at our cost structures and reducing our inputs and becoming more of a regenerative system that's actually viable without having to purchase more land and grow? Obviously you've got the offtake of growing businesses and growing family farms, and there's less people in the community, and that affects schools and hospitals and communities all around Australia. Probably the biggest take-home message I learned on my Nuffield journey was carbon. Carbon is the key to soil health and is the key to growing more grain, to growing more pasture, to storing more moisture, to capturing more moisture, and it provides the background for all resilience in our farming systems, for disease, for pests, for nitrogen efficiency, for other, everything revolves around carbon. Along the way, travelling through France, I looked at organic producers in David Guy. I went to southern France, to Toulouse, and visited with Sarah Singler. Soil health specialists, real advocates of this soil health movement. And they were all diversifying their systems with perennial sown understory covers of lucerne or white clover, with wheat sown into it. They had companion crops of buckwheat, sunflowers, lots of other companions to mimic that symbiotic relationship between giving nitrogen to a nitrogen-needing crop and providing that nitrogen from a legume-based plant. So Jim Harbuck in Iowa, just many other people had adapted their system from monocrops into polycultures and perennial-based sort of systems with grazing and diversity in their system. What role does soil biology play? I think this is the new frontier of agriculture in the next 10 to 20 years. It'll be all about soil biology. It'll be about what we're doing in our soils to harm this biology or to promote the biology, to promote the microbes and all the benefits that they can give in improving structure, improving water use efficiency and water holding capacity of our soils. So plant roots alone can only explore 1% of the soil. If they're associated with fungi, they can stem that out to 20% of soil they could be exploring to capture more nutrients, more water, and bringing that back to their host plant. So extremely important to concentrate on every decision we make in our cropping systems and our pasture systems. What is the impact of soil biology on everything that we do? So if that's tillage, if that's spraying, if that's seed dressings, and so on, just what impact is that having on the soil biota? Soil cover, it's not new. It's not everyone in this room will be well aware how important soil cover is, but it's probably the most important way to improve soil health and one of the easiest. It regulates the soil temperature. It helps enable that biology to stay alive, especially over our hot summers. We're not going to be able to always grow a cover crop or have a species growing or a root system in the ground all year round. Our rainfall in Australia dictates when we can have a crop growing and when it doesn't. But it can certainly, we can dictate how much cover we leave on a field, how much erosion we get, how that temperature moderation, the canopy and the length of that moisture stays in the soil if it's got cover on it. We also need to be aware that different plants have that different nitrogen-carbon relationship, and cereal crops and other high-carbon plants should dominate a rotation. We've been as guilty as anyone in the last decade of growing wheat, lentils, because that's been the great profitability. Lentils are a terrible plant, and so are most legumes at depositing carbon in the soil. They're a low-carbon nitrogen crop, and we've actually seen from that decision, that rotation decision, to have our organic carbon has been dropping because of that low carbon rotation and the tightness of that rotation. We've got our biology right up and cranking, and then they eat all the residue, and then when they're finished there, they start eating organic carbon. So quite important to get that rotation right through a farming system, to have lots of high carbon plants, keep pumping that food and that cover into the system. Cover crops, I went away it was in the title of my report, and it was something I really wanted to look at, see if they were capable of being an option in South Australia in low rainfall areas. And I came back thinking they're probably more an opportunity crop. There's certainly opportunities when we have rain during harvest or rain during the summer, that instead of spraying 2 or 3 times to kill those weeds that germinate out there over the summer, there's an opportunity to grow a cover crop, pump some more carbon back into the soil, fix some of that photosynthetic sunlight, get some roots and some biology grown, and it will certainly aid in our carbon capture in our systems. But it will be obviously reliant on rainfall, and it may indeed be something that we can put in a winter cropping phase, so have a multi-species winter cover to build soil and have that in there as a rotation, like the northerners do as a fallow. The thing with cover crops is they will use nitrogen and nutrients and moisture. The long-term goal is that they build that carbon and they feed the soil web. Now, I think the transition into that sort of system, there'll be hits early. It will cost you, and our trials on our own farm over the last 4 years, we've seen that there's probably a 10% reduction in cash crop yield the following year from following a cover crop. However, the long-term 4, 5, 10-year benefit of building that carbon is still yet unknown. Companion cropping or polycropping is something I saw through Europe and the US and Canada. This photo is up on Jeremy Wilson's place in North Dakota. He was sowing chickpeas and flax together and harvesting them together. And it was designed to stop the disease spread of Ascochyta through his chickpeas. There was an actual physical barrier there to stop spores blowing through his chickpeas in a monocrop dough, and so very successful, back to very little fungicide in that companion. Companions need to be selected for a reason. There's no point just throwing any two. There needs to be a lot of research done on which companions are compatible. We've been growing canola and broad beans on our property on Kangaroo Island for the last 4 years together. They're a very good companion. The harvestability is easy. You can have a low drum speed to thrash them both out. They're quite easy to clean out afterwards because of the size difference. And they complement each other by sharing that root zone, sharing nutrients and sharing water. And in those areas of paddocks where the canola's doing really well, it'll choke the beans out, and where the canola's getting wet or getting disease-ridden, or the beans then step up and fill in that void. So it's actually made our system quite a lot more resilient, where we have a good crop, even if it's some beans good and some canola good in different areas of the paddock, but it's certainly improved our resilience and a profitability on a large scale. I'll just speak about some manure. For the last 13 years we've been using chicken manure as our fertiliser source on our property up at Paskeville. So we use 6,000 tonne of manure each year, and it's really transformed our farm and our resilience to water stress and also water holding capacity. We've grown our water use efficiency from 15 kilos per mil 15 years ago to 28 kilograms per millimetre now, average over a rolling 5-year average. And it's been no small part through the stubble retention and chicken manure. So it increases the plant available water and infiltration. Another thing I saw when I was away to capture more of that nitrogen and stop ammonia gassing off on the stockpiles of manure is to cover them with straw or tarpaulin, or put them under cover. So we now use straw on top of our piles to stop that ammonia coming off, and also reduces the odour for passing traffic and if you're near a house or a highway. Ideally, a best management practice to retain the majority of that ammonia and those other leachable products is, or volatilising products, is to spread manure just like you would urea. Spread it in as cooler weather as possible. Spread it when it's not windy, and ideally into a living cover crop or a living crop. So once again, if we have that wet summer, we have that opportunity to grow a cover crop, that might be the year to put 2 or 3 times the manure on, so you know it's captured. And then these dry seasons like we've just been through, where we don't have any rainfall for 6 months, we'll maybe leave the manure off that year. Relay cropping is something that I saw as I travelled around, mostly in the US. This is where 2 crops were growing in the same field at the same time, but they were harvested at different times, sown and harvested at different times. So this is on Lauren Steinlage's place in Iowa. He was growing wheat and soybeans, and also barley and soybeans together as companions. And this was to extend the cropping window for more roots in the ground more often. So he'd adapted his header front to put blocker plates over the soybeans so that he could go in there, push those soybeans over, harvest the wheat and barley. He already had another crop there which may have been sown a month or so after, a long season soybean or a short season barley. He'd have the opportunity to harvest those 2 crops in the one season. It's probably not that applicable in low rainfall areas. I think they would compete quite well against each other. And the season generally in Australia is dictated too by the heat coming in and the moisture drying up. So certainly an interesting space, and something that high rainfall, Southern Vic, Kangaroo Island, some of those areas, or that could well fit in that system. So what recommendations? I guess carbon is king. Grow more carbon, that increases everything in your soil, improves everything in your soil. It will hold more moisture with more carbon, and that's something to really strive towards, and will base their system around growing more carbon. Maintain that soil cover. Use those cover crops as an opportunity crop. Select low water use species. A lot more research has to go into cover crop species in Australia. There's lots being done in the US, but whether we need to look down that perennial sort of pattern so that we can have that understory there that comes alive during the summer and goes dormant during the winter, rather than relying on that big rainfall event to actually establish a cover crop over a summer. There is a symbiosis between companion crops. This needs further exploring. Apart from the varieties I've sort of suggested, there are other benefits and species that could be sown together to be quite symbiotic and improve profitability without the use of as much fertiliser or fungicides because of their relationship. Increase diversity where possible. Spread manure into a living cover crop, and cover any piles of static manure with a suitable cover source. So just in closing, I guess, what have we done on our farm since I returned, and what has Nuffield, the journey, sort of done to our own business, and I guess we're planting these companion crops. We're continuing to explore with other companions. I learnt this year that chickpeas and linseed, you can't put spinnaker on because it kills linseed. So next year it might have to go to simazine. There's quite a lot of stuff we don't know yet. We have different chemicals here in Australia. We have different crops. So it'll be quite a learning curve to find out which crop I can nuke next. We're trialling those cover crops. Limited success. This year we put in a couple hundred hectares and nothing came up at all. We're reducing our synthetic fertiliser. We haven't used any starter fert or phosphorus fertiliser for 13 years now. We didn't sow with any seed dressings this year at all, apart from canola, which came in a bag with it on. we're really just trying to build that seed up with micronutrients, with zinc and copper and phosphorus to get the plant off to as healthy a start as it can without putting a fungicide on to protect it. We don't want to put these crops and these seeds in cotton wool, and as soon as that wears off, everything comes in and attacks it. So try and build that resilient plant. A healthy plant is healthy soil. They go hand in hand. So try and build that resilience over time, reduce your seed dressings, insecticides and fungicides in the system. Probably the biggest one of all is seek knowledge. Seek what you're trying to achieve, what the benefits, and I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, and probably most of this is all information you've heard before and from the couple of speakers we've had already in this session. But yeah, seek knowledge. If the more you have, the more prepared and resilient you'll be. And then just a note to the researchers out there in the room to please keep researching good companion species, seeding rates for these companions, soil-biota interactions, the impact of all the sides on the biology and on our farming systems. So thank you very much.